The instructor is shocked, wondering how the boy awakened, since not even a master could break that trap. At that moment, a mysterious hand touches the shoulder of the man who sabotaged him, surprising him. The academy's director then appears and, in a calm voice, asks his subordinate to step away. With that, the instructor bows as a sign of respect and agrees to his superior's order. The other students start to gossip about the director's presence and whether he has any connection to the commoner. The man is furious because the boss showed up at just the right moment and almost exposed their plan to everyone there. After that, the frustrated instructor walks away alone down an empty hallway. Later that night, he goes to find Jess, who was sitting on the edge of a fountain. The noble then says the plan failed and tells the other to stay away for a while to avoid trouble. With a contemptuous look, he says the commoner got lucky that time and calls him useless. Meanwhile, the director tells someone named Kylie to watch Sid's movements so they don't cause problems. He then gives a slight smile and says he has removed the obstacles from the path. Looking at our hero, he says that now everything depends solely on the boy's effort. With that, the white-haired boy is seen floating in a mental space, surrounded by energy. He then wonders if this is what his friend Kane was talking about regarding the elements. He then remembers his colleague explaining that the elements are the foundation of the world and the goddess's creation. The boy then questions why humans need to awaken to use magic, unlike monsters. The boy continues to read the book intently while his blonde friend watches. Kane then shows a magic crystal and explains that monsters have them inside their bodies. These crystals contain elemental powers, which is why the creatures are born with an affinity for them. For humans to use magic, they need to go through the ritual and be accepted by an element. Thus, they cannot use magic unless they can manipulate the elements around them. Kane says that in the ritual, elements with good compatibility draw near, and after that, it's just a matter of training. The boy wonders if the magic crystals are the elements themselves in their physical form. But the blonde corrects him, saying that in fact, everything in this world is made of elements. Back in the present, a sphere of water floats in front of him, and he wonders if he has an affinity for it. Out of curiosity, the protagonist then reaches out his hand and tries to touch the blue sphere. As soon as he touches the element, a vision of two mermaids swimming appears in his mind. However, a giant octopus-like monster emerges and stares at him menacingly. The creature stares at the boy with its glowing red eyes, and he stands motionless. Suddenly, the boy starts to scream in pain, feeling an immense pressure in his head. The other elemental spheres move toward him, and the world's essence begins to manifest. The elements then collide, and an explosion of energy happens around the boy. A symbol with the four elements forms, while a voice says it is the will of the goddess. The reflection of this new elemental symbol can then be seen in the protagonist's eye. Watching from afar, the director realizes the situation is getting out of control and becomes worried. The white-haired boy grits his teeth as he tries to control the enormous amount of power. To contain the energy, the director quickly casts a goddess barrier spell, and then he uses a sealing spell to try to stop the boy's awakening. With the situation under control, the protagonist finally finishes the ritual, kneeling before the statue. On the hall floor, we see 3 different magic circles shining with great intensity. Our protagonist is kneeling on the ground, surrounded by a pillar of blue energy. With a pained expression, he endures the pressure as lightning courses through his body. The other students don't understand the surge of power and question why the director sealed him. The director then shouts for Lewis to calm down and not get carried away by the situation. But the boy just grits his teeth and faces it all with his eyes glowing blue. An intense glow fills his eye as he focuses to control the power. Suddenly, he finds himself alone in a mental space full of stars and smoke. There, he sighs in relief and says he almost lost his sanity. Looking at the elements, he realizes they are very similar to elementary particles. He then theorizes that if they are like particles, maybe he can manipulate their frequencies. With this thought, the sphere in his hand glows and begins to change its form. Soon, the sphere gains more points of light that spin at an impressive speed. An intense white light then explodes from the sphere he was holding in his hand. After the explosion, the 4 elements float above his palm in a controlled manner. Back in reality, a wave of colorful energy spreads throughout the hall. The director is impressed by the scene and whispers the goddess's name. Soon, a huge rainbow-colored energy tornado forms on the spot. The other students are thrown back and are shocked by what the commoner did. Seeing this, the director smiles and says that, as expected, the boy exceeded his expectations. The boy thinks that if magic is made of particles, humans can use it just like monsters. The 4 elemental energies then begin to circle around his hand. He harmonizes the movement with his breathing, and the energy flows smoothly through his body. Then, he concentrates to try to create a magic crystal inside himself. With his eyes closed, he focuses all his energy to use magic like a Qigong technique. His eye opens, revealing a new and mysterious snowflake symbol. Enormous ice crystals then sprout from the ground with overwhelming power. The ice spreads rapidly, completely freezing the entire temple floor. The director watches the scene, surprised by what the boy managed to do. The ice crystals then shatter, releasing a massive burst of light. A blizzard of ice and magical energy takes over the entire academy hall. The director seems quite pleased with the result of the new student's awakening. After the explosion, our hero floats in the air, surrounded by an intense blue aura. Frightened, the other students run desperately, screaming for help. A group of students who couldn't escape ends up frozen in their tracks. Using the ice shards, he creates a massive dragon that flies through the hall. The director realizes the situation has become serious and that he needs to suppress that power. He then takes out a golden artifact and begins to pray, asking for the goddess's help. With open arms, he asks the goddess to grant Candria the power of flame. With a determined look, he creates a powerful barrier of fire to contain the ice. The director's fire barrier advances through the hall to contain the massive wave of ice. With the force of the impact, the other students are thrown away, unable to react. The flames and ice clash in a power struggle that illuminates the entire place. We then see Neil, who seems to be absorbing the energy from the explosion with a serious look. The energy released in the fight is so strong that the entire academy building glows intensely. In his office, a professor with glasses feels the tremor and wonders what is happening. The instructor who sabotaged him sees the light outside and is shocked by so much power. In the training room, a female instructor also stops what she's doing upon sensing the commotion. After everything calms down, our hero walks calmly toward the director. The boss then questions him about that new element that looked like ice. At that moment, Neil is surrounded by an aura of fire and ice with a determined look. Back in his mental space, the boy notices that the elements move quickly and merge. He then realizes that he can create a new element if he combines the existing ones in the right way. The energy of the wind and water elements then flows through his body, and he doesn't know what to do. With this discovery, he thinks he needs to talk to someone about what happened. He then comes to his senses and sees that the academy director is right in front of him, waiting. The man points to the mess and, with a serious look, asks what that was. With the hall completely destroyed, the head of the academy faces the newcomer in front of the statue. He then holds the golden artifact he used to create the fire barrier earlier. With an intimidating look, he asks the boy if he has any idea what he just did. The boy then looks at the students who are frozen and are now thawing on the floor. He scratches the back of his neck with an awkward smile and thanks the director for saving him. The director says he is going to his office and leaves the cleanup to someone named Cox. He then calls the boy to come along, as he imagines the boy has many questions. The two then walk together through the now empty and dark hall, all after the commotion. They then head toward the temple's main door to go to the director's office. In the office, the boss congratulates him and says that he has awakened all 4 elemental attributes. The white-haired boy confirms the information with a very confident smile on his face. To prove it, he shows the 4 elemental spheres floating masterfully in his hand. The man is shocked by his ability and says his talent is impressive. With that, he hands him a book and says it will help him study and understand magic. He explains that he can only help with wind and earth, and the boy thanks him for the gift. After the conversation, he calls for Kylie and asks her to enter his office. The woman from the training room then enters and bows before her boss. The director introduces her as Kylie and says she is his trusted assistant. He says that from that moment on, the woman will be in charge of protecting the boy. With a serious look, the assistant says they need to go somewhere else now. They arrive at a different place, and the director explains that it is his meditation and training room. The woman, with a curious look, then asks the boy to show her that element. The boy says he discovered it by chance and shows the new crystal element in his hand. He says that by accelerating and mixing 2 elements, a completely new one can be born. With a confident look, he reveals that he has named his new creation the ice element. The director is surprised, as he has never heard that it was possible to mix elements. The assistant is also shocked and comments on how cold the boy's new power is. With an excited and somewhat suspicious smile, she seems very interested in it. She then lunges at the boy, wanting to feel his power up close. The woman tries to hit him with several blows, but the boy manages to defend against all of them. Her punch is then blocked by the boy's hand, which is covered with ice energy. With a serious look, the protagonist faces the woman without backing down one bit in the fight. The assistant is shocked by the boy's strength and the power of the new element. With the impact of the defense, the woman is thrown back with considerable force in the process. She realizes she has slowed down and wonders if this is also the power of the ice element. The director asks if this has been done before, and Kylie, who is now using fire, says no. He then explains that ever since magic emerged, people have been studying its power relentlessly, and many geniuses throughout history dedicated their lives but never managed to fuse them. Most people only control one attribute, and very few awaken several at once. Even Lady Miriam, a very rare genius, only managed to control 3 elements. She also once tried to fuse 2 attributes, but ended up failing in her attempt. The director explains that the woman's mind and body simply couldn't handle the power. The boy then asks if normal humans can't withstand the fusion of attributes. The man confirms this and says that to use magic, one must have a very strong body and mind, and when accelerating the elements, an immense willpower is needed to guide them. If someone tried to guide several at once, they would collide inside the person's body, and that collision of power would certainly end up costing the life of whoever tried. With a serious look, the assistant says that in other words, it was impossible, but that boy's potential could be compared to that of a true saint. With that, the woman is filled with determination, and an aura of fire completely surrounds her. Her eyes glow, and she shouts that she wants to test the boy's power once more. She then charges forward again, and the 2 exchange blows with their elemental fists. Watching the fight, the director remembers an old hypothesis from Lady Miriam. The theory stated that to withstand the collision, one would need the body of a dragon, or else use magic through magic crystals, just as monsters do. The boy then asks what the results of that old research on fusion were. The man says it was a disaster, and since all the tests failed, the idea was forbidden, and he never imagined that someone would one day manage to break that great taboo. The boy understands that he avoided the collision by circulating the elements in separate paths. The woman kicks him and asks if he understands the significance of what he just did. He calmly blocks the attack and replies that yes, he understands perfectly. He remembers his past life and knows that this power can be a source of trouble. The assistant agrees and warns that if the secret gets out, bad things could happen. The assistant says her job is to protect him, but that he shouldn't cause trouble. The boy says he will lie, saying that the ice is just an application of his water element. The head of the academy is confused and repeats the word application, not understanding. He then challenges the instructor to attack him again to prove his willpower. With her fists in flames, the woman charges at the boy with all her might. Smiling, he says that water can be very interesting and uses his power. He explains that under intense pressure, water begins to change its form. The energy then explodes, throwing him back with the force of the impact. The assistant is completely shocked and speechless at what she just saw. The director is also surprised and realizes what is happening there. With a smile, he reveals that it is the superionic ice form of the water element. The boss then holds the ice sphere and says in shock that this isn't magic. The woman questions how he made ice that doesn't melt and still radiates heat. The boy says that liquids change under pressure, and he just used the knowledge he already had. The director then invites him to seek him out and promises to teach him how to use his power. The assistant questions if he's really going to protect the boy, since this is dangerous, but the man says he doesn't want to deny any possibility and that he will help him. She accepts the decision, but thinks the boy will be a very troublesome student. Surrounded by her fire aura, she vows that she will protect him no matter what. The director and the boy then watch the woman create a sphere of fire. He says classes start tomorrow and gives him a mental recovery potion. The boy is surprised, as he didn't know potions for the mind existed. Back in his room, he doesn't feel sleepy and thinks about meditating until morning. As he tries to enter his room, a mysterious hand grabs him from behind. He turns around and sees his roommate, Kara, sitting up and still awake. Surprised, the white-haired boy asks if he was waiting for him to arrive. The boy thanks him for his help and asks how he noticed the trap's artifact. In silence, the roommate just hands him a black card. The card is from the Gandis company, and he understands why the boy is so clever. He then questions if the boy wasn't worried about being targeted by dangerous people. But the roommate just says thank you and leaves the room without another word. He thinks he might need the help of a merchant's son in the future. The next day, the students are gathered in the academy's training hall. A super muscular professor introduces himself as Derek, their physical instructor. With a smile, he says that with his help, everyone will have perfect bodies. The other students are scared and think the new professor is a lunatic. But our hero agrees, as body and mind are the foundation of martial arts. The instructor then notices the boy's gaze and seems interested in him. In an instant, the man appears behind the two, who are startled by his speed. He then grabs them and says, "Perfect," while Kane screams, frightened by the situation. The instructor approaches and compliments the boy's body, saying it's a work of art from the goddess. With a disgusted expression, our hero doesn't like that weird approach at all. A noble student then complains that the boy has no muscles and questions the professor's statement. The man replies that the great families have lost quality, while the white-haired boy looks embarrassed. The instructor then announces that, following tradition, the upperclassmen will demonstrate the equipment. An upperclassman then comments that this year's freshmen are not at all reliable for the academy. He continues, saying the newcomers lost even to commoners, and not just to other families. With an air of superiority, one of them wonders what it's like to look down on the so-called geniuses. The boy says he will show them the difference in power, as this is the tradition of the place, after all. The instructor then tells them to stop talking and get straight to the demonstration. One of the upperclassmen then volunteers to go first and adjusts his clothes with a confident air. The boy approaches a machine and explains that it's for training the arms and chest. He then explains that the difference is that the weights are strengthened with earth, element, magic. The upperclassman then reveals that each weight on the machine is equivalent to 1 ton, surprising everyone. The other students are completely shocked to see him lift 1 ton with ease. On another machine, a female upperclassman also impresses everyone by spinning at high speed without losing her balance. Soon after, another upperclassman easily runs on a treadmill with 250 kilograms on his legs. With a satisfied smile, the instructor announces that it's now their turn and tells them to be careful. One of the freshmen then tries to use the machine, but he can't even move it 1 centimeter. Quickly, all the other students fail and end up on the floor, completely exhausted and dizzy. One of the boys is thrown back with full force when trying to use the super heavy treadmill. The upperclassmen then mock the freshmen, saying they are a bunch of weaklings. Suddenly, a student shouts that there's a monster here, as the boy easily uses 10 tons. The others can't believe what they're seeing and wonder if this is all just a joke. Next, on the treadmill, he runs so fast that the machine starts to smoke and is about to explode. On the training wheel, the boy spins so fast that he ends up creating a huge tornado in the hall. Completely paralyzed, the upperclassmen are left speechless by the display of power. The instructor questions if he used enhancement drugs, but sees no reaction from a magic potion. In the background, the protagonist's friend becomes furious and starts releasing a red aura. The red-haired friend then goes to the machine and surprises everyone by lifting 15 tons. Then he goes to the treadmill and runs with 2 10-ton weights in his hands with effort. Terrified, the upperclassmen now look at the 2 new students as if they were monsters. The redhead throws the weight on the ground, destroying the floor, and declares that he won the contest this time. He then tells his friend to ignore the others and decide who is superior between the 2 of them. But our hero says the class is just basic training, and the goal is to strengthen the body. He adds that showing off to others means nothing, and the upperclassmen get annoyed. One of the upperclassmen then gets furious and angrily asks if that was an insult to him. Pointing at the boy, he tells him not to be conceited and asks what his attributes are. The red-haired friend then smiles and proudly reveals that he has dual attributes of fire and earth. The upperclassmen are shocked that a commoner awakened fire and earth, and this could be a problem. The red-haired friend then asks him about his attribute, and he reveals that it's the water type. At this, one of the upperclassmen starts laughing mockingly and points at the boy. He then says that with such a useless attribute, his power is a huge waste. Not understanding, the white-haired boy asks what's so funny about the water attribute. A classmate explains that this element's martial arts only has the water blade as an attack, and another girl adds that because it's focused on defense and support, it's widely looked down upon. Our hero then reflects on the fact that his new power is belittled by others. The upperclassmen mock him, saying his future is bleak and there are no water masters. They continue, saying the best he can do is provide support for his teammates. With a serious look, the boy wonders if his limit is to just become a master. The upperclassman laughs and says that's common sense, and that commoners really don't know anything. The boy's friends then get angry and shout that the upperclassman is the real ignorant one. With that, the 2 groups start arguing and prepare for a brawl in the hall. Sate's brother then goes to the professor and says they were called to set an example. He explains that the best endurance training is to take the opponent's attacks on purpose. Therefore, he proposes a fight to show just how useless the water attribute really is. The 2 then face each other with challenging gazes, and the tension between them becomes very high. The blonde friend warns that this is Seat's brother, and that he surely wants revenge. The boy then tells the professor that there is no superior or inferior attribute and accepts the fight. With a confident look, he declares that he will prove his idea by fighting against the upperclassmen. The upperclassman and his group then look at the newcomer with contempt and an air of superiority. The white-haired boy then tells his blonde friend that it's okay and he'll take the fight. With a smile on his face, the instructor says that magic will only be allowed in the central area of the hall. He then says that the main rule of the fight is that dodging attacks is forbidden. The red-haired friend then starts laughing in a very lively manner while releasing his fire aura. Excited, he shouts that they can finally fight fairly and honestly there. With a challenging look, he faces the upperclassmen and calls them weaklings to provoke them. The group's leader says he'll teach the redhead a lesson after he's done with the water user. He then begins to concentrate his energy and prepares to cast a powerful spell. An intense light then fills the hall while the white-haired boy watches. Even with the upperclassmen preparing to attack, our hero remains calm and serious. From the light emerges a massive stone armor that completely covers the upperclassman's body. With his new armor, he charges forward and yells at the water boy that he's going to regret this. But the red-haired friend intercepts the attack and lands a powerful fire punch on the upperclassman. The punch creates a massive explosion of power that sends the upperclassman flying and breaks the floor. The other nobles are completely shocked and speechless at the freshman's strength. With his fist in flames, the boy faces the enemy on the ground and calls him a weakling. The upperclassman can't believe his earth armor, the strongest of its kind, was broken in one hit. The leader realizes the problem and orders his colleagues to defeat the redhead altogether. With that, two upperclassmen charge forward at the same time to try to attack the red-haired boy. The red-haired friend laughs excitedly and says that now the fight has gotten really interesting. He then blocks the attack from the two upperclassmen with his arms without any difficulty. With a confident smile, he says their blows didn't even tickle. The redhead then grabs the leg of one of the upperclassmen who tried to kick him from above. He then spins the classmate and uses him as a weapon to hit the other, yelling that they are weak. With the force of the blow, both upperclassmen are thrown far away with no chance to react. The upperclassman in armor takes advantage of the distraction and tries to attack the redhead from behind. The stone punch then lands a direct hit on the back of the freshman's neck, who couldn't dodge. Wounded, the noble then wonders if they have finally managed to defeat the newcomer. However, the hand of his earth armor begins to crack after the direct hit. The upperclassman is then shocked to see that his attack had no effect on the target. His arm then suffers immense damage, and he screams in desperation from the pain he felt. The redhead turns around and says he thought a mosquito had landed on his back. The noble wonders how a newcomer can control magic like an experienced apprentice. Without giving him time to think, the redhead lands a fire punch on the upperclassman's chest. The blow is so strong that it throws him against the wall, creating a huge crater on the spot. The instructor then warns them to never forget their origins as fighters. He adds that if they don't want to end up like this, they must train much harder. Our hero is a little scared and wonders if his friend didn't overdo it with the force. Meanwhile, the other freshmen and upperclassmen also start a big brawl in the hall. One of the female upperclassmen then charges forward and tries to hit one of the newcomers with her fire fist. The blonde friend stops her and says he won't let her interfere in their main fight. The two sides then face off in a battle of fire versus wind attributes. Seeing that everyone is busy, our hero smiles with a very confident look on his face. He then faces the leader of the upperclassmen and says it's time for the final match between them. The leader gets angry and says that as the heir of the Harry family, he will teach him some manners. With a stomp, he breaks the floor and prepares to show the pride of a noble. The noble then leaps and charges with all his might towards the white-haired boy. He then concentrates his wind energy and prepares a powerful piercing technique. A massive pillar of green wind is launched towards our protagonist with full force. But the upperclassman is completely shocked by the scene he sees before him now. The white-haired boy has created a huge ice shield to defend himself from the blow. With his shield, He withstands the pressure of the wind without showing any sign of effort. The noble is paralyzed and doesn't understand how the boy managed to create that ice. The shield then repels the attack and throws the upperclassman back with the force of the impact. Holding a shard of ice, he wonders if that is really water magic. The boy confirms it and says it's just an advanced use of his water attribute. He then attacks the upperclassman with several ice projectiles at high speed. A blue-haired girl watches the fight, impressed by the newcomer's power. The other nobles wonder what kind of water magic creates a shield like that. The leader of the upperclassmen thinks that things are not going to work out for him this way. In another part of the fight, the red-haired friend knocks out another upperclassman with a punch. The leader then ignores the situation and focuses again on his main opponent there, but the redhead continues his series of attacks and defeats another upperclassman with a kick. He then faces the leader and asks if the noble will be his next punching bag. The noble dodges the punch and challenges him to hit him if he's really capable. With that, the red-haired boy is surprised by the noble opponent's speed. Suddenly, a series of smoke explosions occur all over the battlefield. The blonde friend then shouts for the redhead to calm down because he is being attacked. The leader uses his wind magic to move quickly and calls the other one trash. Annoyed, the redhead tells the upperclassman to stop running and fight him fairly. However, the upperclassman ignores him and takes advantage of the distraction to attack the protagonist. The white-haired boy notices the noble's surprise attack and prepares to act. He then blocks the blow with his ice blade and calls him a useless noble. The upperclassman says that as a noble, he just made the right decision to win. The redhead gets annoyed with the situation and decides to attack the protagonist as well. He then lands a fire punch on the boy, who defends himself with his ice shield. With the impact, our hero realizes that fighting two at once is difficult. Seeing the opening, the upperclassman shouts that now is the perfect chance to attack. He then prepares to attack the white-haired boy from behind with all his might, but the redhead stops him and shouts at the noble not to interfere in his fight with the other one. The upperclassman gets furious and calls him a lunatic for not understanding that fighting together is better. The redhead then throws the nuisance away and prepares to fight against his friend. With the path clear, he says they can finally settle things now. The instructor observes the fight and comments on the red-haired newcomer's fighting style. At that moment, the protagonist finally sees an opening in his colleague's guard. He then attacks his friend's weakness and lands a precise blow in his blind spot. With the direct hit, he says that this should finally be enough to stop him. Suddenly, one of the girls screams desperately for him to watch out for something. The boy turns around and sees that his red-haired friend managed to grab his hand tightly. With a wicked smile, he says that he finally caught his opponent. He then lands a fire punch on the boy's face and tells him to feel the pain. With his fist in flames, he asks how it was and says the fun has just begun. Wounded, the protagonist says that the school rules prohibit harming others. An ice aura then begins to surround the boy's body as he holds him. The redhead is surprised and says the fight is getting more and more interesting. He then remembers the professor, and besides, he won't run or hide anymore. The two then exchange blows, with the redhead attacking and the other defending with ice. The white-haired boy then asks if his friend prefers something stronger. He then freezes the redhead's arm, who is shocked and speechless at the power. The redhead shouts excitedly and says the pain he feels is simply incredible. With the excitement, a massive fire aura explodes from his body while the other watches. He then uses the power of his flames to break the ice and free himself from the blow. With his eyes glowing, he says that fighting makes him stronger and the fight will continue. We then see a flashback to when the redhead was younger and in the forest. He questions what pain is as a pack of wolves surrounds him in the darkness. With the rain falling, The boy looks scared and exhausted from running from the monsters. Without mercy, the wolves then charge with all their might at the defenseless boy. The creatures bite his arms and legs, but he doesn't give up and tries to fight them. One of the wolves then bites his arm hard, and he feels immense pain in the process. With determination, he holds the animal's mouth and tries to break free by any means. Suddenly, his eyes glow red, and he releases a massive aura of power. After the explosion, he realizes that pain is the proof that he is still alive. He then smiles frighteningly as he stares at his wounded hands. He then clenches his fist and says that pain is what makes him stronger and stronger. With this, he understands that in this world, only the strongest can survive, and for that, he would need to defeat every enemy that appeared in his path. Back in the present, the redhead prepares to continue the fight against his colleague. With a determined look, he clenches his fists and shouts, asking for more pain. Realizing the situation, our hero plants his feet firmly on the ground and prepares for the fight. The redhead then leaps and shouts the protagonist's name as he charges to attack. He says they are the same, and that they are both monsters hungry for more power. To defend himself, the white-haired boy creates several ice hands around him. The ice hand then grabs the redhead's fire fist and stops his direct attack. He then diverts the blow to the ground, causing a massive energy explosion. With the attack diverted, the red-haired boy is surprised by the other's skill. The protagonist then takes advantage of the opening and lands a powerful kick to the redhead's head. Even after taking the hit, the colleague just says that it's okay for him to continue. The two then exchange several blows, and the redhead says the fight is incredible. Worried, their friends decide they need to stop the fight before it gets worse. But the redhead doesn't stop and charges once more to attack his opponent. Our hero then thinks about how to stop the fight without breaking the school rules. He places his hand on his friend's stomach and asks him to calm down, releasing his ice. With that, a massive ice wave called a storm rushes towards him with full force. The redhead is trapped in a wall of ice, and with a smile, says that really hurt. But even trapped, he begins to release his fire aura to try to escape the ice. His fists then fill with flames, and he prepares to break the prison. The instructor watches the scene with a smile and says the fight is interesting. The redhead breaks the ice and shouts that he won't go down that easily and wants more power. With his eyes glowing, he faces his friend and calls for him to continue the fight. Suddenly, a powerful fire explosion occurs, ending the fight between the two. Surprised, our hero wonders if that was Professor Kylie, whom he had met before. The woman then steps on the redhead's back and says he has gone too far with the fight. With a look of contempt, she calls him a muscle-brained idiot and scolds him. The instructor approaches and, with a love-struck look, compliments the professor's beauty. The woman ignores him and questions him about the director's orders not to let anyone get hurt. The man looks embarrassed and says he was just trying to bring out their potential in the fight. The assistant then faces him and says she was sent to protect the white-haired boy. She then informs him that the academy director wants to see him in his office after class. The instructor already imagines he's in for another scolding and creates a small fireball. He then observes the freshman and thinks about the potential they showed in the fight. The man then wonders how strong they might become in the academy's future. He tells the redhead to get dressed and informs him that he will be forgiven, but it shouldn't happen again. The red-haired boy thinks that right now, he wouldn't be able to fight against a master. He also thinks he needs to hunt monsters to buy new clothes for training. The professor then dismisses everyone and warns them that the training will get harder. The blonde friend approaches and says it was rare for a freshman to beat an upperclassman in a fight. The protagonist says he didn't find anything about that in the materials he read before. The colleague then reveals that this has only happened 3 times, and they all became masters. He adds that the most recent time was when the current upperclassman enrolled. Elsewhere, the leader of the upperclassmen apologizes to his friend Jess for the defeat. The upperclassman says there's no hurry, and they will have plenty of chances for revenge. With a hateful look, he says they are the nobles who control everyone's destiny. Our hero then observes the situation from afar with a very serious expression on his face. Two girls are talking, and one of them compliments the boy's talent with water magic. The other is impressed and says she couldn't copy such mysterious techniques. With that, she thinks she needs to find new attack methods for her attribute. Her friend tells her not to worry, as she is still only 16 years old. The blue-haired girl then fills with determination and says she will do her best. The other girl then calls the protagonist and says Miliana wants to talk to him about something. The other students start to gossip and wonder if this is a love confession. The girl then asks him to teach his water magic to her friend Miliana. The boy agrees on the spot and, with a smile, says that they are friends now, after all. The blue-haired girl gets flustered and repeats the word, friends, in a low voice. Our hero is a little confused by the reaction of the new friend he made there. She then asks if he won't regret it, as she might cause trouble. After the class ends, all the students leave the academy's training hall. The two girls then approach the protagonist and his friends to talk. Worried, the blue-haired girl asks once more if he won't regret it. With a smile, he says of course not, as he would never betray a friend. But the blue-haired girl says she doesn't want to involve him in her personal problems. Suddenly, she turns and runs out of the hall, and her friend shouts her name, worried. The other girl then apologizes to the boy and runs after Miliana to talk to her. The protagonist then thinks that everyone has their own circumstances and that he causes problems. He turns to his blonde friend and asks if he knows anything about the girl. The colleague explains that she is the granddaughter of a grandmaster and the only daughter of the Royce family, but after her grandmother's passing, her family ended up losing all its power. With this, our hero calls his other friend and asks if he knows anything more. The boy then reveals that her family had a conflict with the Arcanists Association. The white-haired boy understands that her problem has to do with this so-called association. For now, he decides he will need to ask them to find out more details. Elsewhere, a new professor arrives and tells all the students to be quiet. He introduces himself as Sid and says he will teach everyone how to use magic and arcane arts. The blonde friend asks what's wrong, and the boy says the new professor doesn't like him. The man then appears behind the two and scolds them for talking during class. With that, he takes 1 credit from each of them, and the two get very annoyed with the situation. The professor then warns them that if they continue breaking the rules, their credits will drop to 0. He then takes another credit from our hero and tells him to learn some manners. The man creates a sphere of light and prepares for a demonstration of his power. He then summons a massive stone golem with a spear and shield for his class. The two friends are shocked by the size of the earth magic he used there. The professor explains that to use arcane arts, one must master both magic and martial arts. He then creates a huge sword of fire and explains how to become an apprentice. With his sword, he says that if they master this, they will finally become fighters, and for that, they need to connect their magical power with their body and mind. With the golem's sword, he cuts through the air and shows the strength of his arcane art. The other students are shocked and impressed by the professor's demonstration. The master says that the student who causes the most damage to the statue will earn 5 credits. Before that, he tells everyone to form groups according to their elemental attributes. The water students are sent to the side to practice and help with the warm-up. 2 students then start mocking and say that the water attribute is a punching bag. The protagonist then thinks that this way, the girl will never become a grandmaster. She then remembers her past and says she needs to prove her strength to someone. The boy asks if this person is from the Arcanists Association and what happened. The girl gets flustered and says it's nothing and has nothing to do with him. He then questions her about her obsession with attacking, since support is also important. She says she wants to be a grandmaster, and for that, she needs to know how to attack and defend. The boy then thinks that the water attribute must also have powerful attack spells. The girl says she tried everything but, in the end, couldn't make up for the lack of power. Suddenly, a student approaches and asks her to warm him up with her water shield. With a serious look, the blue-haired girl creates a powerful water shield in front of her. A student with wind magic then charges forward and tries to attack the girl with his power. The protagonist observes the scene and remembers his past upon seeing her situation. In a flashback, we see the boy in a wheelchair while others mock him. One of them then takes his research and says someone like him doesn't deserve glory. With that, voices in his head tell him to give up and accept his fate. Back in the present, the boy smiles and thinks that she continues to dream without giving up. He then decides that maybe he can show her a new path for martial arts. The boy then approaches and prepares to teach a new technique to his friend. Suddenly, a huge wall of ice appears and blocks the attack from the wind student. With a smile, he asks if she can observe his technique and show the power of water. He then raises his hand and asks the professor for permission to attack the stone statue. The man says if he doesn't cause any damage, he will confiscate his credits and questions him. The boy then reveals that he thought of a good method to increase water's attack power. The other students start to laugh and doubt that water magic can do anything. The girl warns him that the statue is reinforced and he might lose his credits. But the boy just says it's okay and that he already has an idea in mind. He then walks towards the center of the training field for his demonstration. Kneeling, he picks up some sand and thinks that the gentle can overcome the hard. With the sand in his hand, he begins to concentrate his energy for the new technique. He then applies strong water pressure to the sand and fires it with full force. With this, the sand becomes a powerful weapon that can cut through anything in its path. The projectile of water and sand then moves at high speed towards the statue. The water's energy then spins at high speed and prepares for the big impact. The boy then names his new arcane art technique Water Cutter and attacks. The other students don't understand and think that with such a weak force, it won't do anything. However, the statue is now covered in several precise and very fine cuts. The professor is completely shocked and can't believe what just happened. The cuts then begin to glow, and the stone statue shatters into several pieces. With a smile, our hero says that this is the true power of water magic. Later that night, the friends walk together through the academy's courtyard. The blonde comments that the look on Professor Sid's face after the attack was priceless. He continues, saying the man turned pale and fled as soon as the class was over. The wide-haired boy says he was focused on the magic and didn't notice the scene. The friend then talks about the girl's dedication to helping her blue-haired friend, and that in her free time, she plans to rent a special training room for the two of them. The other colleague then reveals the price, and everyone is shocked by the high amount. With that, our hero turns and asks his purple-haired friend for a favor. He reminds him that in a few days, they will have a new training mission from the academy. The instructor then informs them that from that moment on, they will participate in the missions. The instructor explains that the academy is near the Great Mondo Forest, an ancient monster territory. He continues, saying that monsters still live there and get stronger and stronger near the center. This means that the creatures living on the outskirts of the woods are not as dangerous. The academy was built to protect the empire, which is why students participate in the missions. The magic crystals from the monsters can be exchanged for credits, and the best student earns more. But if a reckless student needs to be rescued, they will end up losing a credit. With the news, The red-haired friend gets super excited because he can finally fight with all his might. Our protagonist then confirms that the plan is to train Miliana in a real combat situation in the forest. He then proposes that the 5 of them form a team for the mission, as they will be more efficient that way. The orange-haired friend asks what the blue-haired girl thinks, and she agrees with the idea. With the decision made, the group prepares for their first training mission together. The instructor then announces that their first mission will be with the academy's upperclassmen. The leader of the upperclassmen glares at the newcomer and warns him not to be careless, as the mission is dangerous. But with a smile, the boy says he's not worried, because people grow by overcoming danger. The noble gets annoyed with the newcomer's audacity and calls him a cheeky and conceited brat. He then orders his colleagues not to help the newcomers if any fight breaks out in the forest. The blonde friend suspects that the upperclassmen will take them to fight stronger monsters. Our hero then smiles and says that's perfect because it means more valuable crystals. The 2 groups then enter the forest to begin the academy's training mission. The upperclassmen lead the way while the newcomers watch the path carefully. An upperclassman explains that the area was Behemoth territory, but the Saints eliminated them. He continues, saying that the newcomers think too highly of themselves because they couldn't fight alone. Suddenly, a massive bear paw with sharp claws strikes the ground with great force. The students are surprised and scared by the creature that suddenly appeared there. A giant fighter-class bear then appears before them with a menacing look. The upperclassman then jumps into a tree and says he will just watch the fight from afar. He thinks the monster is strong and that the newcomers will have a lot of trouble defeating it. Our hero then shouts for everyone to get ready because the battle is finally about to begin. With a roar, the creature releases a massive wave of energy and prepares to attack. The orange-haired girl then charges forward with her fire sword to attack the monster. Her blow hits the bear directly, but doesn't seem to cause much damage to the creature. The blonde friend then attacks from above with his wind daggers to support the team. His attack also hits the monster, but the creature seems to feel nothing from the blow. The boy is shocked by the bear's resistance and wonders how they will defeat it. The monster then attacks and throws the boy away with a powerful swipe of its paw. Just as the creature was about to attack again, a fire arrow grazes past its head. The attack hits the bear's shoulder squarely, and it roars in pain from the arrow's impact. The purple-haired boy then shoots another arrow, and the protagonist praises his aim. Furious, the monster now turns and faces the 2 new targets with its red eyes. The blue-haired girl then gets ready and launches a powerful water attack with her staff. The stream of water then wraps around the bear's arm, which is startled by the attack. With that, the blue-haired girl's magic manages to completely restrain the monster. She then prepares to use a new arcane martial art with her staff. The girl uses the flow of the water and throws the creature over her shoulder. The giant bear then falls with a thud into a nearby lake. Her friend explains that this is an original technique that combines magic and jujutsu. The protagonist finds his colleague's ability very interesting and gives a smile. With that, he runs towards the spot where the giant monster fell. The bear leaps out of the water, and the boy says that he can't lose this fight either. He then prepares to attack the creature in mid-air with a very powerful punch. The blow hits squarely, sending the bear higher with a spiral of water. The boy then creates a sphere that mixes the energy of water and fire in his hands. He prepares to launch the combined power at the monster, which is still in the air. The attack then shoots forward like a beam towards its large target in the forest. The energy sphere hits the bear, causing a massive explosion in the middle of the sky. Inside the smoke, a strange energy creature seems to devour the monster. With that, the bear is finally defeated and falls to the ground, creating a large crater. Steam begins to rise from the creature's body, and the others don't understand what it is. The boy explains that it causes internal damage and can interfere with breathing. The blue-haired girl then wonders if she can do that too. The protagonist then tosses some rings to his new teammate there. She catches the items in the air and is confused, wondering what these things are. He explains that they are magic rings for using other types of elements in battle. The boy says he prepared one for her, and the girl thanks him for the gift she received. Suddenly, a giant pillar of fire appears, and someone shouts Miliana's name.